I helped my best friend pick up her child from kindergarten. The child disappeared after going to the public restroom. My friend was heartbroken, but she still comforted me. This isn't your fault. I felt even more guilty, sold my house and car, used all my savings to compensate my friend, and searched everywhere for the child's whereabouts. Later, I died on the road while searching for my child. After I died, my soul drifted back to my best friend's side. Only then did I realize everything was a trap she had set for me. My best friend used my money to buy a big house and a luxury car, and even sent her son abroad to study. Their whole family sucked me dry and lived happily. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day my best friend asked me to pick up her child. 1. Living a second life. When my best friend Dao Man tearfully begged me to help pick up her child, I still nodded without hesitation. She thanked me gratefully. Wen Yang. I knew you were the best. I'm treating you to a big dinner tonight, so please don't stand on ceremony with me. Suppressing the surging hatred in my heart, I smiled and replied, don't worry, I definitely won't hold back. Dao Man, in this lifetime, I will absolutely not be polite with you. In the previous life, Dao Man found a job with excellent benefits and compensation. She came to me in tears. Yang, neither my husband nor my in-laws are willing to help me pick up the kids. The kids are starting elementary school in the second half of the year, and my in-laws are getting older. My husband's income alone isn't enough to cover our expenses. I need this job, but it's impossible for me to pick up the kids after work. I just can't make it in time. I really don't know what to do. Can you help me? Dao Man is in a typical widow-like marriage. Her husband, Miao Hanyu, earns a monthly salary of 3,000 and only cares about his own enjoyment. Never bothering with household matters, her in-laws treat Dao Man like a maid and often bully her. Dao Man has been a housewife for 5 years, diligently taking care of the entire family, but in that household, she had no money to buy new clothes or skincare products. She even had to be cautious about how much she ate. A few days ago, Dao Man bought 2 extra pairs of socks. Her in-laws immediately accused her of wasting money. The elderly couple urged Miao Hanyu to stop giving Dao Man the monthly 600 yuan living allowance, forcing her to earn money to support the family. Dao Man had no say in the matter and had no choice but to go out and work. Dao Man knew she couldn't rely on her in-laws. In order to secure the job smoothly, she had no choice but to tearfully ask me to help pick up her child. Dao Man repeatedly assured me that she only needed my help for 3 days. After 3 days, her parents would come from their hometown to help, and then she wouldn't trouble me anymore. Dao Man was crying her eyes out, feeling sorry for her difficulties. I promptly agreed to help her. Unexpectedly, I stepped right into the trap that Dao Man had set. That day, I went to the kindergarten on time to pick up Dao Man's son, Xiaozhe. Following Dao Man's instructions, I took Xiaozhe to play at the park near the kindergarten. I never could have imagined. Xiaozhe entered the park's restroom and never came out. I waited anxiously for Xiaozhe, but he never appeared. Ignoring the strange looks from others, I rushed straight into the men's restroom to search for him. But after searching the entire men's restroom, I couldn't find any trace of Xiaozhe. My legs went weak with fear, and I immediately dialed the emergency number. The police officers searched the park inside and out and even checked the surveillance footage from the area. But they found nothing. Just like that, Xiaozhe mysteriously disappeared. At that moment, I felt as if the sky had fallen. Xiaozhe is the apple of Dao Man's family's eye. If I lose Xiaozhe, they will definitely fight me to the death. After Dao Man arrived, she tearfully comforted me. Wen Yang, this is not your fault. I know you didn't mean to lose Xiaozhe. She even stopped Miao Hanyu, who wanted to fight me to the death. Dao Man's actions made me feel even more guilty. To ease the guilt in my heart, under the hints from Dao Man and her husband, I sold my house and car, using all my savings to compensate them. 2. As soon as Dao Man got the money, she immediately turned against me. She would call me at 1 in the morning every day to insult me, blaming me for losing her son. Perhaps Xiaozhe's disappearance had triggered her. She spent 3 hours cursing me without repeating a single word if I don't answer Dao Man's phone calls. She will send my in-laws to the company to scold and hit me until I answer the phone. Dao Man tortures my mind and psyche, while her husband Miao Hanyu does everything he can to torment my body. He sends me an address every few days. Miao Hanyu said the address was provided by a kind-hearted netizen, and Xiaozhe is very likely to be there. He cursed and ordered me to go find him, saying that if I don't bring Xiaozhe back, they will haunt me for the rest of my life. I was already drowning in guilt and self-blame for losing Xiaozhe. The actions of Dao Man and her husband caused me even more mental torment. I just want to find Xiaozhe quickly and atone for my sins. Therefore, whenever Miao Hanyu sent me an address, I would travel great distances to find the person. Those places were extremely remote. I lost weight from exhaustion searching everywhere for people, and my feet were covered in blisters. I lost my high-paying job because I took too much time off. I could only survive by doing odd jobs. In the end, after long-term physical and mental torment, I died on the road while searching for my child. After I died, my soul drifted back to Dao Man's side. Only then did I realize that everything was a trap set up by Dao Man and her husband specifically for me. Dao Man never went to a job interview. Xiaozhe was never missing at all. Dao Man and her husband used my money to send Xiaozhe to study abroad. And they also bought a big house and a luxury car. They deliberately tormented me, only wanting my life. After my soul drifted back to Dao Man's side, I often heard her say to her husband, "Only when Yang dies will her money truly belong to us." I never expected it until my death. My best friend will stab me in the back. In this new life, I will never let Dao Man and her family get away with it, since they are so eager to take advantage of me and leave me with nothing. In this lifetime, I will make sure they bite off more than they can chew. So, when Dao Man offered to treat me to a big meal, I didn't hold back and directly chose a newly opened high-end restaurant. As soon as we sat down in the private room, I immediately handed the menu to Dao Man. Man, order whatever you like. Since you're treating today, I'll just follow your lead. Dao Man didn't catch the deeper meaning in my words. She took the menu and ordered without holding back. She directly ordered 4 Australian lobsters weighing 2 pounds each, plus 2 king crabs weighing 5 pounds each. For just the two of us, she ordered 12 dishes. Having been best friends with Dao Man for so many years, how could I not understand her little schemes? I instantly realized this meal wouldn't be just the two of us. Sure enough, as soon as Dao Man put down the menu, her husband, in-laws, and son coincidentally appeared. Miao Hanyu explained to me with a smile, "My parents and I were taking Xiaozhe to play nearby, and he kept insisting on seeing his mom. We really had no choice but to bring him here." Dao Man waved her hand dismissively. "It's fine, when Yang won't mind." I nodded emphatically. "That's right, I don't mind at all." 3. Dao Man's entire family came in full attendance. Of course I understand, they're trying to take advantage of me again. In my past life, every time Dao Man invites me to a meal, her husband and son always coincidentally show up for various reasons. Sometimes, her in-laws come along too. I sympathize with Dao Man's financially dependent situation, so I always pay the bill in advance. Even though her husband and in-laws ate and took things, I never let Dao Man take a single cent. In this lifetime, if their family still thinks they can take advantage, they're simply daydreaming. Since I'm not the one hosting this time, what do I care? Dao Man's husband and in-laws had barely settled in their seats before they called the waiter over to add a few more dishes. Dao Man's father-in-law also ordered a bottle of red wine. I stole a glance at the bill. Great, it was already close to 20,000. The Dao Man family has no sense of shame at all. I hope they can still smile when it's time to pay the bill. I ignored the petty thoughts of the Dao Man family and just kept my head down to eat. After eating and drinking my fill, I used the excuse of going to the restroom and slipped away directly. I didn't leave the restaurant. Instead, I hid in the boss's office to watch the surveillance footage. Dao Man didn't know that the restaurant owner was my good friend. He had already arranged for someone to prepare drinks and a fruit platter for me, so I could comfortably watch the show. In the surveillance footage, Dao Man and her family finished a whole table of lavish dishes. Dao Man's mother-in-law felt she hadn't taken enough advantage of the good deals. She called the waiter over again and ordered 7 or 8 more dishes, planning to take them home. Seeing this, Dao Man's father-in-law also ordered several premium cigarettes and 2 bottles of fine liquor. As they were about to leave with their numerous packages, the waiter promptly presented the bill. Dao Man frowned at the 22,000 yuan bill. Is there a mistake? My friend already paid. Dao Man thought I left early to settle the bill. Unfortunately, she thought too much. The waiter smiled and replied, your friend had something urgent and left first. She said you're treating tonight, so you should be the one paying. Dao Man's face instantly turned ashen. She immediately called me. Wen Yang, we've finished eating. Why aren't you back yet? At this point, Dao Man still had the nerve to call me back to pay the bill. I stared at Dao Man's gloomy expression on the surveillance screen and said with feigned urgency, I have something urgent to attend to, so I have to go now. Man, thank you and your family for inviting me to dinner. Don't worry, I'll definitely be on time to pick up Xiaozhe tomorrow. I didn't give Dao Man a chance to speak and hung up the phone directly. Dao Man's family didn't get any advantage. Their faces were extremely unpleasant. Dao Man's mother-in-law complained discontentedly. Dao Man, call your friend back to pay the bill. She always paid for meals before, why should we pay this time? Dao Man is not a fool, so of course she wouldn't break with me at this moment. If she falls out with me over a meal bill, how can she take advantage of my family's wealth? Dao Man whispered a few words to Miao Hanyu. Miao Hanyu reluctantly took out his credit card to pay the bill. Dao Man's father-in-law, seeing this, immediately returned the fine cigarettes and alcohol. Her mother-in-law also wanted to return the packed meals. How could prepared meals possibly be returned? 4. The server explained that the meals could not be returned. Dao Man's mother-in-law actually sat down on the ground and started throwing a tantrum. Dao Man and Miao Hanyu also wanted to pay less, so they let the mother-in-law act unreasonably. The restaurant manager directly called the police. Dao Man's family was lectured by the police before they obediently paid the bill. The family had just left the restaurant when Dao Man was slapped twice by her mother-in-law. She angrily accused Dao Man, why didn't you make sure when Yang paid the bill? Spending so much money today and being so humiliated. It's all your fault. Her mother-in-law had used all her strength. Dao Man was struck so hard that she staggered back a few steps. With 5 distinct finger marks clearly visible on her face, she covered her swollen, reddened cheek and looked at Miao Hanyu with a pitiful expression. However, Miao Hanyu followed his mother's lead and said, Mom is right, you didn't think this through. Mom hit you to teach you a lesson. Miao Hanyu paid no regard to Dao Man's feelings. He scolded Dao Man a few times, then actually abandoned her and Xiaozhe, leaving with his parents. Dao Man looked at her son beside her with tears in her eyes. Xiaozhe was completely absorbed in playing his game console, not even giving her a glance. Dao Man was so angry that she sat on the ground crying without any regard for her image. Thanks to the high-definition surveillance camera my friend had specially installed, I was able to clearly see Dao Man's breakdown and tears. Dao Man, you started crying a bit too early. This is just the appetizer. There will be more days for you to shed tears. The next day, Dao Man sent a message early in the morning. Darling, I promised Xiaozhe that I would take him to the park near the kindergarten today. You pick up Xiaozhe and take him to the park for a while. I'll come find you both after work. There is a trap set by Dao Man in the park near the kindergarten. She keeps calling me dear, but behind my back, she's trying to scheme against me. Dao Man is even more two-faced than a garbage bag. I sneered and replied to her with an okay emoji. Dao Man, your plan definitely won't keep up with the upcoming changes. 4:30 p.m. I went to the kindergarten to pick up Xiaozhe. I didn't take Xiaozhe to the park designated by Dao Man. Instead, I drove Xiaozhe to an amusement park 20 kilometers away. In my past life, I took Xiaozhe to the park designated by Dao Man to play. Xiaozhe went missing after entering the park's restroom. At that time, I thought Xiaozhe had been kidnapped by human traffickers, and my heart was filled with guilt. I would do anything to get Xiaozhe back. I didn't know until after I died. Dao Man had already arranged for someone to wait in the park restroom. Xiaozhe had just entered the restroom. The man hid Xiaozhe in the suitcase and took him away right in front of me. Dao Man and Miao Hanyu pretended to be heartbroken over losing their child in front of the police. They went to the police station that very night to withdraw the report. They claimed that Xiaozhe had coincidentally run into a relative at the park. The relatives saw Xiaozhe alone and, concerned for his safety, took him home. The police saw that Xiaozhe was safe and sound, and after advising Dao Man and her husband to keep a closer watch on their child in the future, they closed the case. After that day, Xiaozhe was sent abroad by them to study. Dao Man and Miao Hanyu took advantage of my guilt, demanding that I sell the RV. They took all my money as compensation. They were afraid I would discover the truth, even more afraid of losing the money they had schemed so hard to get. So they gave me no time to catch my breath, trying every means to torment me, causing me to die on the way to find Xiaozhe, since Dao Man was willing to use her own son to set me up, in this lifetime. I will make sure the crime she tried to pin on me becomes a reality. 5. Half an hour later, Xiaozhe and I arrived at the amusement park. Dao Man must have instructed Xiaozhe in advance. When Xiaozhe saw that I had changed the location at the last minute, he threw a tantrum and insisted on going to the park that Dao Man had mentioned. I immediately took out the newly bought toy to coax him. After all, Xiaozhe has a childlike nature. As soon as he saw the new toy, he completely forgot Dao Man's instructions. I took Xiaozhe for a walk around the square outside the amusement park. I bought him his favorite fried chicken and milk tea. Xiaozhe, full and satisfied, started clamoring to go to the amusement park. By this time, Xiaozhe had completely forgotten Dao Man's reminders. I checked the time and deliberately stalled by making 2 work calls. Xiaozhe grew impatient and bit my wrist hard. He cursed at me with foul language. "You damn woman. Take me to the amusement park now. If you don't listen to me, I'll tell my parents to beat you to death." Xiaozhe has completely inherited his parents' vicious and cruel nature. His bite broke my skin, and blood immediately began to seep out. I gasped in pain, quickly hung up the phone, took out a tissue, and pressed it against the wound. "Naughty child, I'll let you be arrogant for a little while longer. Your good days are coming soon." I gave Xiaozhe a forced smile and said, "You've got food on your face. Auntie will take you to the restroom, wash your face, and Auntie will take you to the amusement park." Xiaozhe seemed frightened by the coldness in my eyes and finally settled down. I simply treated the wound, seeing that it was about time. I sent Dao Man a message saying that Xiaozhe and I were at the amusement park. She just took Xiaozhe's hand and walked towards the public restroom. As Xiaozhe and I approached the public restroom, we saw a little boy wearing a red jacket. He looked about 5 or 6 years old, fair-skinned and adorable. There were no adults around the little boy as he hopped and skipped alone towards the men's restroom. I carefully looked at the little boy and confirmed that he was the person from my memory. I immediately lowered my head and said to Xiaozhe, "Go wash your face quickly. If we're late, we won't be able to buy tickets to get into the amusement park." Xiaozhe indeed became anxious when he heard me say that. He immediately shook me off and ran towards the men's restroom. I pretended to chase after Xiaozhe and accidentally bumped into a little boy wearing a red jacket. I carefully steadied him but deliberately spoke in a cold tone to scare him. "Little one, why are you alone? There's a monster in the restroom that eats people. Without your mom and dad around, the monster will gobble you up in one bite." The little boy was so scared by me that he shrank his neck. He took 2 steps back, then turned and ran toward a woman in white who was on the phone not far away. The woman in white seemed to have just realized that her son had run off earlier. She tightly held the little boy's hand and turned to enter the amusement park. I watched the woman in white leading the little boy away and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. In this lifetime, the one being abducted by human traffickers was finally not him. 6. In my previous life, I had encountered the little boy's parents while searching for Xiaozhe. At that time, I had no money for food and was so hungry that I had to search through the trash for something to eat. The little boy's parents saw that I was pitiful. They treated me to a meal and even slipped me a few $100s. After the meal, we sat by the roadside chatting. Only then did I learn that their child had gone missing on the same day as Xiaozhe. Even the way the 2 children went missing was exactly the same. I was grateful for their help and asked them for a photo of the little boy. I promised to keep an eye out for any news about the little boy. On the back of the photo was written the little boy's name, as well as the specific time and location of his abduction. I will carry that photo with me until the day I die. That's why I can recognize him at a glance in this lifetime. When my soul was following Dao Man, I saw news about the little boy's family. By the time the little boy was found by his biological parents, 10 years had already passed. The little boy was all skin and bones back then. He was tortured by his abusive adoptive parents to the point of breaking a leg and becoming somewhat mentally impaired. His biological mother, upon seeing his miserable condition, suffered a mental breakdown and was eventually admitted to a psychiatric hospital. His biological father lived in guilt every single day. He always felt guilty towards his son and eventually died of depression. The little boy's parents are both very good people. Despite enduring the pain of losing their son, they still tried their best to help others while searching for their child. In this lifetime, they no longer have to suffer such hardships. I coldly watched Xiaozhe's figure as he rushed into the men's restroom. This heart-wrenching pain should be endured by the wicked. I waited at the restroom entrance for 5 minutes. But Xiaozhe didn't come out. Another 3 minutes passed. Xiaozhe still hasn't come out. I don't know what method the human traffickers would use to take Xiaozhe away, but I know my plan has already succeeded, suppressing my inner excitement. I pretended to be anxious and called out Xiaozhe's name at the entrance of the men's restroom. I shouted loudly, but there was no response from Xiaozhe. A kind-hearted man helped me search the men's restroom. He said there was no little boy inside. I was so frightened that my face turned pale, and my hands trembled as I dialed the emergency number. With the experience from my previous life, my acting successfully deceived everyone. I crouched on the ground, wailing loudly, continuously calling out Xiaozhe's name. Someone comforted me gently, others spontaneously helped me look for Xiaozhe. No one knows that I was crying for my tragic self from the previous life. By the time Dao Man and her husband arrived, the police had already searched the surrounding area. They also checked the surveillance footage but did not find any images of Xiaozhe coming out of the men's restroom. The police solemnly told Dao Man and her husband, "The child may have been taken away by someone using illegal means. Rest assured, we will do our best to find the child." Dao Man and Miao Hanyu were stunned. They only wanted to use their son to swindle money from me. How could their precious son really be kidnapped by human traffickers? Dao Man completely lost her mind. She rushed over crying and screaming, hitting me. "Wen Yang, how could you lose Xiaozhe? Why did you have to bring Xiaozhe to the amusement park? Why didn't you go to the small park near the kindergarten?" 7. I didn't dodge and took 2 slaps from Dao Man head on. It's not that I can't avoid it, but that I must not avoid it. At this moment, the more pitiful I appear, the more advantageous it is for me. Dao Man still wanted to take action. The police quickly grabbed her and repeatedly urged her to calm down. Next, it's my time to shine. I covered my face with both hands, crying sadly. Man, I had no idea this would happen. I picked up Xiaozhe, and he insisted on going to the amusement park. I couldn't persuade him otherwise. So I had to go along with it. I thought this amusement park was close to your workplace, making it convenient for you to pick up Xiaozhe after work, which is why I brought him here. I made it clear why I brought Xiaozhe to the amusement park and then started attacking Dao Man. Man, I sent you a message right after I brought Xiaozhe to the amusement park. As soon as Xiaozhe went missing, I sent you a message after calling the police. Isn't your workplace very close to here? Why did it take you so long to come? Faced with my questioning, Dao Man avoided eye contact and did not answer for a long time. She couldn't say she wasn't working nearby, nor could she tell the police. After receiving the message that I had brought Xiaozhe to the amusement park, she grumbled and demanded Miao Hanyu take her to the amusement park. On their way to the amusement park, they were still devising new plans to frame me. Seeing that Dao Man was left speechless by my question, Miao Hanyu instinctively retorted, "Xiaozhe would never throw a tantrum to come to the amusement park. We clearly warned him." I stared intently at Miao Hanyu. "What did you tell him?" Miao Hanyu finally snapped back to reality. He couldn't repeat to the police what he had told Xiaozhe. He could only grit his teeth and say, "We told Xiaozhe to listen to you." I cried and retorted, "Don't you understand Xiaozhe's temper? He was crying and throwing a tantrum to come to the amusement park." What else could I do but give in to him? Miao Hanyu instantly fell silent. He spent day and night with his own son, so of course he knew about Xiaozhe's unreasonable nature. At this point, he and Dao Man were already convinced that it was Xiaozhe who insisted on coming to the amusement park. As for me, I was just forced to bring Xiaozhe to the amusement park. Dao Man and Miao Hanyu finally calmed down. The police took us to the station to give our statements. At the police station, Dao Man and her husband completely blamed me for Xiaozhe's disappearance. They kept demanding that I compensate them for their son and provide restitution. However, the police checked the surveillance footage, which showed that Xiaozhe broke away from me and ran into the men's restroom alone. I had been waiting at the entrance of the men's restroom the entire time for Xiaozhe. After discovering Xiaozhe was missing, I reported it to the police immediately. I have done everything I can. What could I have done wrong? After completing the statement, the police indicated that I could leave directly. I know, Dao Man and Miao Hanyu will definitely not let this go, and I have already prepared a big surprise for them. After leaving the police station, I deliberately slowed down, waiting for Dao Man and Miao Hanyu. Dao Man and her husband quickly caught up. 8. Dao Man stood before me with eyes red and swollen from crying. The hatred in her eyes surged like flames, seemingly ready to burn everything in sight. I think she truly loved Xiaozhe. That's why she cried so bitterly upon learning of his disappearance. Just at this moment, every word she said felt utterly chilling. Dao Man stared straight at me and said, "Wen Yang, children who are abducted by human traffickers are very difficult to find. You lost Xiaozhe, so you must compensate us." Miao Hanyu immediately chimed in. Xiaozhe is the Miao family's only successor, carrying all the hopes of the old Miao family. You have to compensate us with all your savings, as well as your house and car. In addition, you must pay us 100,000 yuan each month for the cost of finding the child. With my annual salary of 1 million, Miao Hanyu demands 100,000 from me every month. He's asking for an exorbitant amount without any shame. I ultimately overestimated the humanity of Dao Man and Miao Hanyu. I thought that Xiaozhe's disappearance would cause them to grieve and panic for a while. Xiaozhe's whereabouts are unknown. Instead of trying to find their precious son, they want to drain me dry to satisfy their own desires. It seems Dao Man and her husband don't love Xiaozhe that much. They have always only loved themselves. I took a deep breath and barely held back the urge to curse. Then, I pretended to feel guilty and, word by word, led them toward the abyss, with tears in my eyes. I said to them, "Actually, I feel very guilty too, and I will definitely compensate you. Give me a few days to sort out my assets. I will do my best to meet your demands." Dao Man and Miao Hanyu exchanged a glance, seemingly surprised that I had agreed so readily. Miao Hanyu thought for a moment before threatening me viciously. "We're only giving you 3 days. If the compensation isn't settled in 3 days, I'll fight you to the death." He deliberately waved his fist at me. I pretended to be scared and nodded. Only then did Miao Hanyu contentedly lead Dao Man away. I watched their departing figures and slowly curled the corners of my mouth. 2 days later, I showed Dao Man and Miao Hanyu a 260 square meter, fully renovated luxury apartment. I sincerely said to Dao Man and her husband, "This apartment is what I've carefully selected to compensate you. There are elementary and middle schools near the neighborhood. In the future, when we find Xiaozhe, it will be convenient for him to go to school here. Don't worry about the mortgage issue. I'll take care of everything." Dao Man and her husband were already captivated by the opulent, golden interior decoration of the large flat. On top of that, the real estate agent's sales pitch was incredibly persuasive. Dao Man and Miao Hanyu were deeply moved. I observed their expressions. I could tell they really wanted this apartment, but were worried I wouldn't help them pay the mortgage on time. I immediately made a promise. "I've already asked a lawyer to draft a mortgage repayment agreement. As soon as the bank loan comes through, we'll sign the agreement for the mortgage repayment." To lower their guard, I deliberately brought up the missing Xiaozhe again. I know that no matter how much I give you, it can never make up for the pain of losing Xiaozhe. All I can do right now is try my best to improve your quality of life. Man, I sincerely want to make it up to you both. Please don't refuse. 9. Miao Hanyu still seemed somewhat hesitant. Dao Man, having been my close friend for so many years, knows my character best. She knows I keep my promises and believes I will pay off their mortgage for them. Dao Man was afraid the opportunity would slip away, so she eagerly signed the purchase contract. Seeing this, Miao Hanyu also wrote his name on it. This moment, I suddenly felt extremely grateful that Dao Man and Miao Hanyu were not well educated and had limited experience. Otherwise, they would have made me write a loan repayment agreement first, rather than easily believing a casually made promise. Dao Man and Miao Hanyu did not yet know that the developer of this real estate project was not legitimate. Buying this apartment required almost no down payment, but the mortgage they took on increased by nearly $1 million. In my previous life, I saw the news expose this unscrupulous real estate developer. Knowing that many people have been deceived, I specifically brought Dao Man and Miao Hanyu here to see the house, when they can't afford the mortgage in the future. I hope they will still like this big gift I gave them. After signing the home purchase contract, Dao Man and her husband were still immersed in the joy of owning a luxury home. I then took them to the 4S dealership and compensated them with a luxury car worth over 500,000 yuan. Of course, the luxury car also required no down payment. Dao Man and her husband drove the luxury car home with the purchase contract, feeling delighted. My mood is also very pleasant. How could it not be delightful to make an enemy carry a debt they can never repay for a lifetime? In the following period of time, I regularly deposited the mortgage and car loan payments into Dao Man's bank card every month. As for the expenses of finding Xiaozhe requested by Dao Man and her husband, I only cried and said, "Buying you a house and a car has already exhausted all my savings. Man, please give me a little more time. As soon as I sell my own house and car, I will immediately transfer all the money to you." Dao Man and her husband are busy showing off their luxury cars and mansions. They even forgot about the matter of finding Xiaozhe, so naturally, they didn't press me step by step as they did in their previous life. I took the opportunity to resign and sold my house and car at a price below the market rate. 3 months later, I took a flight to Haicheng and changed to a new phone number. Start a new life of your own. Dao Man and her husband didn't realize I hadn't sent the money on time until they received a debt collection call from the bank. They tried to contact me by phone, only to find that my number had long been deactivated, and the house I used to live in had already changed owners. Dao Man and her husband couldn't find me and finally panicked. They chose to call the police, demanding that the police arrest me. The police had already determined that Xiaozhe's disappearance had nothing to do with me, and the names on the home purchase contract and car purchase contract were Dao Man and Miao Hanyu. What do their mortgage and car loan have to do with me? Dao Man, unwilling to give up, went to consult a lawyer. She wanted to sue me in court to force me to continue giving them money. The lawyer frowned and reminded Dao Man and her husband, "You have no favorable evidence in your hands, so there's no chance of winning the lawsuit." Dao Man and her husband finally realized they had been deceived by me. 10. After I left, the lives of Dao Man's family fell into complete disarray. The monthly mortgage and car loan payments crushed Dao Man and her husband. To repay the loans, they worked day and night. They also spent all of their parents' pension. In the end, they had no choice but to sell the old, dilapidated house they had been living in. That old, dilapidated house was practically worthless. They barely managed to hold on for 2 years before their pockets were empty once again, because they couldn't repay the bank loan on time. Dao Man and her husband were listed as dishonest persons and became blacklisted individuals. Their luxury homes and cars were auctioned off by the bank, yet they still carried millions in debt. The Dao Man family could no longer live as glamorously as they once did. They moved into a cheap rental apartment and could only eat boiled vegetables with plain water every day. Miao Hanyu blamed all the misfortunes on Dao Man, beating and scolding her every day. Her in-laws also accused Dao Man of poor planning. They claimed she caused them to lose their eldest grandson and forfeit their luxury mansion and cars. Dao Man endured daily abuse and torment from her in-laws and husband, living in unbearable misery. Compared to Dao Man's life of deep water and scorching fire, I have been doing quite well in the new city. Indeed, after bidding farewell to rotten people and rotten matters, every step has been smooth. Those fists that struck me in my previous life can no longer touch me in this one. In my previous life, I could never understand. Dao Man has already made it clear that Xiaozhe's disappearance is not my fault. Why did she turn against me immediately after receiving the compensation I gave her? Only after dying once did I understand the reason Dao Man was determined to kill me. Dao Man and I are friends who grew up together in the orphanage. We have no relatives and grew up depending on each other. I have always remembered when I was first sent to the orphanage. I was bullied by other children because of my introverted personality. It was Dao Man who stood in front of me and drove away those who bullied me. At that time, she held my hand tightly and said, Yang, don't be afraid. From now on, we will be each other's family. No matter what happens, we will always be together. I have always remembered her words. Over the years, I have cherished and nurtured this friendship with all my heart. Dao Man's marriage is unhappy, and I contribute both money and effort, just so that her in-laws would treat her better. However, Dao Man sees my help as humiliation and charity. In my previous life, Dao Man buried me after I died. She stood before my grave, gritting her teeth as she recounted all my wrongdoings. When Yang, you brought this fate upon yourself. It's entirely your own doing. I've had enough of your charity and grown tired of your condescending attitude. We used to be the same kind of people. Why do you get to live in a mansion and drive luxury cars? Now everything about you belongs to me, and from now on, I will enjoy the life of the elite on your behalf. I looked at Dao Man's face, distorted by jealousy. Only then did I realize that life had tormented her into changing her nature. She envied my respectable job and my happy life. Jealousy gradually darkened Dao Man's heart. That's why she schemed to kill me and take everything I had. Dao Man forgot that such a life was her own choice. 11. When we graduated from high school, Dao Man and I were admitted to the same university. She had been in college for less than half a year when she dropped out due to an online relationship that led to pregnancy. I earnestly advised her, Man, your life has just begun. There are more beautiful things waiting for you in the world. Do you really want to give up your future for a man? I repeatedly tried to persuade Dao Man to calm down and not give up on her studies. However, Dao Man was blinded by love and insisted on dropping out of school. She smiled and said to me, Yang, Hanyu said he will love me for a lifetime. I believe he will give me a happy life. No matter what happens in the future, I will never regret the choice I made today. Dao Man happily got married and had children, but her marriage was not as happy as she had imagined. She regretted it. She regrets having taken the wrong path. Dao Man lacks the courage to admit her mistakes. She then blamed all the misfortunes she encountered on me. But what did I do wrong? I just want to help my friend. I told the friend who was helping me keep an eye on Dao Man's updates, you don't need to tell me about Dao Man anymore. I don't want to hear her name again, nor do I want her to ruin my good mood every day. In my previous life, Dao Man drove me to death and ruined my life. In this life, it's their turn to live in misery. I should also let go of the past and focus on living my own life well. 12. I didn't hear about Dao Man again until 10 years later. Dao Man and Miao Hanyu finally found their son, Xiaozhe. The family of three hugged and cried under the flashing lights of the media. On the television screen, Dao Man's face was sallow and her figure emaciated, like a lifeless scarecrow in a rice field. The heavy burden of life had worn her down to a state of numbness and emptiness. Upon seeing Xiaozhe, it seemed as if a glimmer of hope had been rekindled within her. Holding her long-lost son in her arms, her tears burst forth like a flood. My son, you've finally come back. Yet the 15-year-old Xiaozhe remained cold and indifferent, offering no response. Over the years, under the torment of his abusive adoptive parents, Xiaozhe had become emaciated and had even lost a leg, although his mind remained relatively sound. The light in his eyes had long since faded. Xiaozhe believed that by finding his biological parents, he could completely escape the clutches of his adoptive parents. He thought he could finally live a good life. He returned to his biological parents only to find out that they were burdened with massive debt. To repay the debts, his biological parents had long exhausted their health. Xiaozhe also heard from his grandmother. After grandpa passed away, Dao Man and Miao Hanyu couldn't afford a burial plot. He directly scattered his grandfather's ashes into the river. His grandmother was so angry that she became bedridden. Xiaozhe looked at the shabby, cheap rental room. Then he looked at his grandmother who needed someone to take care of her. He knew that what awaited him was not a good life, and he felt some regret about reuniting with his biological parents. Dao Man and her husband had only been reunited with Xiaozhe for half a year. They appeared on the television news once again. It turned out that after Xiaozhe returned to Dao Man and her husband, he found every day of his life unbearably suffocating. Because my parents are listed as dishonest persons, I cannot live a normal life. My parents also constantly lecture Xiaozhe every day. They urge Xiaozhe to study hard and get into a good university, so he can earn money to help them pay off their debts. Xiaozhe thinks about how, at such a young age, he is already burdened with huge debts and has to support parents who cannot offer him any help. I increasingly feel that I can't see the future. What he wants is a family that brings him happiness and joy, not a burden that drags him down. Xiaozhe is determined to run away from home and live the life he wants. Before leaving, he secretly took the money that Dao Man and her husband had worked hard to save. 13. Dao Man and Miao Hanyu discovered that Xiaozhe had stolen the money. The couple had a big argument with Xiaozhe. Dao Man snatched back the money that Xiaozhe had stolen. She pointed at Xiaozhe's nose and yelled, "If we had known you were a thief, we should never have taken you back. What kind of future can someone like you possibly have? What can your father and I even expect from you?" Xiaozhe had been separated from his parents for many years and had no real emotional connection with them. As he listened to Dao Man's increasingly harsh insults, he grew so furious that he shoved her hard. Dao Man fell backward, hitting the back of her head on the ground, and died on the spot. Xiaozhe seized the opportunity to snatch the money from Dao Man's hand and fled through the door. Miao Hanyu didn't snap out of it until Xiaozhe had already run away. He looked at Dao Man, whose eyes were wide open in death, and trembling, dialed the police emergency number. Later, Xiaozhe was imprisoned for involuntary manslaughter. Miao Hanyu never expected that his son's return would lead to his wife's death and the destruction of everything. He completely lost hope in life. He drowned himself in alcohol every day and stopped going out to earn money. In the end, Miao Hanyu and his bedridden mother starved to death in their rented home. The reporter told Xiaozhe about the deaths of his father and grandmother and asked if he felt sad. Xiaozhe shook his head indifferently. "Why should I be sad? Their deaths are a form of relief. When I saw this scene in the news, I felt as if something heavy was pressing on my heart. It's so heavy it takes your breath away. I remember a scene I saw after my death in my previous life. After my death, Dao Man and her husband took Xiaozhe back to live with them. Xiaozhe laughed happily upon hearing the news of my death. He said, when Yang should have died sooner, he blames me for not dying sooner. He blames me for forcing him to hide abroad, unable to stay by his parents' side. Xiaozhe's cold-hearted malice is ingrained in his very bones. His heart has been black since childhood and can never turn red, so when he was about to run away from home, he would take Dao Man and her husband's savings. He wouldn't think about how his biological parents would survive without money. Xiaozhe has completely inherited the selfish and vicious nature of Dao Man and her husband. They are all the same kind of people, only loving themselves. However, those with malicious hearts cannot escape the scrutiny of fate. One day, they will reap what they sow.